Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency and Money podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm Tony Guerra, pharmacist and publisher, bringing you help succeeding in your career, health, and wealth before, during, and after residency. You can sign up for the email list at pharmacyresidencypodcast.com to get your free LOI template or get editing help working one-on-one with me at residency.teachable.com. Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Just for now, I've really just left the podcast as kind of a library. I just pay for the hosting so that you guys can have access to all the 500 or so episodes that I've done. I may get back into it when we get closer to, kind of that time where applications start up, ASHP starts up. But I did want to talk to you guys about NAPLEX and MPJE. I know that the results came out in January, and I talked a little bit about them. But now, as you are fully studying for the NAPLEX, and many of you, unfortunately, will not pass, and many of you will not pass the MPJE. And, as they say, prevention is the best medicine. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the scores. And the reason I've set it up this way is I don't want to embarrass any schools. My goal is not to call out the schools that have the 40s and 50s and 60s and so on, but to make sure that you are aware of where you stand. And I'll give you this beginning, which is when students go into college, around 80% of them believe they will end up with their degree. That number is closer to 50%. Okay, so most of you will assume that you are going to pass the NAPLEX. Okay, so maybe some of you have started studying and maybe some doubt has crept in, but in general, more will expect to pass than will actually pass. And this is even more so true for certain schools of pharmacy, depending on where you go. The data just is very clear on this. And what I think we really want to do is make sure that you have established where your school stands. And I can't tell you how important it is that you figure out what your own school's pass rate is, because that tells you what league you're in. And I've given this analogy a couple of times. There's a rec league in soccer at the 12 and 13-year-old level. There's a select, which means that they get some kind of training. There's kind of a premier, so there's a competitive, and then there's a premier, which is just above that, where they also get some training. And then there's the travel team, the regional, and then there's travel team national. So, about 5 different tiers of groups. And unlike law schools, we do not tier, T-I-E-R, our pharmacy schools. Now, U.S. News and World Report would have you say that, okay, well, there's rankings for the schools. But as I'll show you, 2 schools in the top 9, okay, so top 9 in the country, have NAPLEX pass rates that are below the average in the 70s. And these are schools that if you would look at them, the names, you would have said there is no way only 3 out of 4 students from those 2 schools passed. They have tremendous credibility in terms of their residency match rate, in terms of what people think of them, but the data does not lie. The data is very clear. Where was a prestigious school before, or what U.S. News calls a prestigious school, does not put you in the league. Another maybe more relevant one than the 12, 13-year-olds is, thinking if you're a, Welcome to Wrexham type fan, how they're trying to get, promotion to the next one and the next one and the next one. And there's, 5 big tiers of that level of soccer. So what I wanted to first kind of talk about is how impacted students are by this. So how many students are impacted. So when we look at the number of students that are at a school in the 40s, that only affects 13 students. Okay, so it's just one school, and that school raised their NAPLEX pass rate from the 20s to the 40s. Okay, you could say, well, they doubled. That's okay, but I still think, a school that still has accreditation that is not even getting half their graduates to pass the NAPLEX on the first try is, well, I don't agree with the fact that that accreditation is still there. 366 students were affected in the 50s, and that needs a little bit of context, which is that when you add up that 13 and that 366, and there were 11,537 test takers, well, it just makes that 500 or a little bit less than that. So just a tiny fraction are in the 40s and 50s. So not such a horrible thing. Obviously, it's a horrible thing for those students, but again, it's not terrible. However, once we get to the 60s, there's a significant population. 20% of all NAPLEX first-time pass takers go to a school that has a NAPLEX pass rate in the 60s. So think about that. 2 out of 5 of 20% of the pharmacy schools will not pass the NAPLEX, and actually a little bit higher than that because of the 50s and 40s. So you say, okay, well, now it's time to say, okay, well, am I in one of those schools? That's a real concern. When you get to the 70s, now you've got another 3,000 students. The 80s, another 4,000 students, which is a reasonable pass rate. But only 1,500 are in schools. Only 1,500 students are at a school of pharmacy that is in the 90s. Okay, so to put that in context, of all the pharmacy schools in the country, where when I went to school, went to school in the snow, uphill both ways, right? The NAPLEX pass rates were in the 90s, quite high 90s often. Now, only 14% of students go to a school where their NAPLEX pass rate is in the 90s. And I assure you that is not the same top 15% of schools that are on the U.S. News and World Report, and we'll talk about which of those are. So let's just take a quick little look here. I do have, if you want to just kind of start from the beginning, I do have the pharmacology class, residency.teachable.com/p/mobile. It's one of those ones with the quizzes and the videos and all that. And really, if the struggle is memorization of the basic concepts, or you just want to get started, and maybe the tool that you're using, RX Prep or whatever it is, just seems too daunting, this is a great review, right? But what I wanted to kind of get to are the numbers, okay? And again, I've hidden the schools. My goal is not to embarrass anyone here. But the middle is 77.9 or 79.30. Okay, so this is actually the middle. And that means that if your school is in the 70s, 60s, 50s, or 40s, you are a bottom half school based on the NAPLEX. Okay, so when you go to look at those schools, you would be absolutely shocked at some of the names that are on there. I'm not going to do that. You can do that for yourself. But again, just because you're like, oh, I came here because everybody says it's a good school, and the U.S. News might say it's a good school, but I'm just telling you that the data show that is not the case. That when you talk about the tiers and you put them into the 5 groups of about 2,200 or something like that, the top tier schools, are there's only 2 of them, right, from the 80s and 90s. Okay, so that's only 40%. And so I just want you to take the time to say, okay, where does my school stand? And just say, okay, knowing that, okay, this is the level of confidence you should have in getting into there, getting and passing the test. And it really has a lot more to do with something that you couldn't control, which is, who did they let into the school? What percentage were allowed into the school? How is there grade inflation such that people that should maybe not have passed do pass? Those things are very real. And, it's again with the reduction in the applicants and the fact that we've really not lost many schools at all, if any. We're really in kind of a bad spot. Okay, so again, what I'm just saying is, because a residency is in such a position that you are impacting people that are very close to you. Like if you have 5 residents, one of them is likely to fail. Now, this is what kind of the RPD thinking is. Well, people that apply for residency tend to be in the higher level of the class. But if your class is passing in the 50s and 60s, being the top of a D class doesn't really make things a lot better. And there are a number of RPDs that will find that their entire class will fail the NAPLEX or MPJE. And they literally have no one to do that staffing because they're just not licensed. So again, I don't mean to be all gloom and doom here, but I just want to make clear that, hey, it's not that you have to take it seriously. I get that everyone takes it seriously, but that there is an inflated sense of your ability to pass the NAPLEX based on thinking, okay, I went to one of the best schools in the country. Okay, you went to maybe one of the best regarded schools in the country, but you did not go to one of the best pass rate schools in the country. That is very different. And let me give those schools some props, because that is a group that I think that we should kind of acknowledge, because that is, that's pretty cool that they did. So let me, kind of make this a little bit bigger, and we'll go to like the top 10 here. I think it's around the top 10 here. But when I read these names top to bottom of the very best NAPLEX scores, you are going to be like, whoa, that is not the US News List. Okay, so Hampton, 100%. Okay, all 4 of them passed. University of Nebraska Medical Center, East Tennessee State, University of Puerto Rico, University of Wisconsin, Northeastern, South Dakota State, University of North Carolina, Ohio State, Rutgers, Concordia, Wisconsin, Pitt, Kansas, Michigan, Butler, Pacific, Ohio Northern, and Cincinnati. I'm just going to cut it there. California, San Diego, Texas, Austin. Okay. So many of those schools are well known, not just because of, pharmacy school, but because of their, maybe it's their football team is well known, or they're just a big school. And so there are a lot of graduates. But there are some very small schools in there. And if I were to say, okay, we'll pick the top 5, how many people would say Hampton, Nebraska, East Tennessee, Puerto Rico, and then Wisconsin? I don't think anybody would pick those as their top 5 schools for NAPLEX pass rates. Okay, I didn't do the same thing with the MPJE pass rates, but I want to warn you that the same thing is true. Okay, so the pass rate is even lower. It's 74.4, so 1 out of 4 will not pass the MPJE. And remember, these are distinct events. Right? So you took statistics and biostatistics, or you're reviewing it now. You roll the dice and you have to get an 8 out of 10. And then you roll the dice again, and now you've got to get, right? So I guess you could use a 20-sided die or something like that, to have those, 2, 4, 5. So you'd have to score like a 15 or higher on a 20-sided die. Okay? You'd have to score, right? So 15. Oh yeah. So if we did it at the bottom, you would just have to score a 6 or higher. Okay. You'd have to score a 6 or higher, but still that seems like, gosh, that's a big chance that you're not going to pass. And then on the 10-sided die, you would have to score a 3 or higher. Okay, but when you're talking about doing 11,500 rolls for each of those dice, 11,500 for the NAPLEX and then 7,100 for the MPJE, that's a lot of rolls. And that's going to be a lot of 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s. And again, I'm very concerned. Okay. And to be fair, some states are ridiculous. They are completely archaic in the law and all of that, but you can complain up and down all you want. I only passed the law by 1 question. And then when I went to transfer, I passed it by a single question again. Like, that isn't one of those things where you're going to blow it out of the water a lot of times. It's like, okay, survived it. But I do, and he doesn't pay me anything for this. This is Brandon Dyson over at TLDR Pharmacy. He has an MPJE cheat sheet for $25 where you kind of fill it in. But for 3 times that, or $75, you can just get the one that goes to your state. And I think the one thing that, let's be fair to the students here, is that because of the residency kind of madness, many more students are going to be going to a state outside of their own where they learned the pharmacy. Or I was going to try to say learn the law, and I said learn the pharmacy. But they're going to a different state, and that makes it harder. There are goofy rules. So I know that Brandon over at TLDR Pharmacy has done a good job of keeping up with these. They have a cheat sheet for every single one of the states. And especially if you're someone that's going to have to do like Maryland, Virginia, DC, or 2 adjoining states, it really makes it a lot easier. But this is really maybe one of the easier things to do, and just say, okay, well, just give me what I need to know. Again, I haven't had to pass the law in 20 years. So that being said, one thing you can do, and I gave this tip last time, if you are going to work for the VA, remember that a government entity like the VA is not subject to a single state. So if you want to kind of make it a little bit easier on yourself, and you are worried, for example, about the MPJE or something like that, maybe it's a crazy hard state like Maryland or something like that, then what I might do is get licensed in Idaho, or I heard Michigan is going to do the same thing, where you just sign a sheet saying I know the law or something like that. But maybe, take the NAPLEX in Idaho, not worry about the MPJE, and get, into your residency, and then take the MPJE at a later time where you need to. But that's only for people working for the VA or doing residency in the VA that I think that rule applies. So anyway, I didn't mean to be Debbie Downer here. I just know that the perception of your school is very valuable to you as an alma mater, and you should be proud of yourself for that. But I'm also telling you that that if you were to tier schools, TIER, by their NAPLEX scores, many schools that are not very well known nationally would rise to the top, and many schools that are quite well known nationally are in the middle or bottom. And being a bit more of a realist when it comes to this, I think is the better part of valor, and I think a good thing. So if you got questions for me, TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com. Again, please enjoy the residency library. I think what's going to actually start happening soon is because residencies are going to get many fewer applicants, we're going to start seeing residencies actually reaching out to podcasts like mine and other places and talking about them. And I've always said that if you're a resident and you're proud of your site and you want to let people know about it, just send me the MP3. I'll publish it. No charge or anything like that. I just I think that somebody that's happy with their residency wants to talk about it should have a voice. And the 500,000 downloads, whatever it is I have on the Pharmacy Residency podcast, and then my 40 or 40,000 YouTube subscribers or whatever might want to hear what you say. So again, that's always available. But again, I have to put minimal work into it because I do have 3 children turning 13 in July here. But if you ever have a residency and you're really proud of it, and the residents want to do some kind of interview with each other, I'd be all for that, and publishing it and letting the masses know about your site. And it's fantastic that you have something great like that. All right, I'll talk to you soon. This has been the Pharmacy Residency and Money Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. You might want to check out our available residency audiobooks at pharmacyresidencypodcast.com/books, or you can get your first book free if you've never been on Audible before. You can work one-on-one with me to get a better residency that will better suit your career, health, and wealth at residency.teachable.com. Feel free to send an invite to Tony PharmD on LinkedIn or email me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. Music was by Policy.